hosting this event with female entrepreneurs worldwide. I really believe in their mission, and as a feminist and fempowerment woman over here, I'm super excited that they're getting all these women together with common interests to share knowledge about certain topics and just empowering women, and that's something I'm so passionate about. Like I said, my name is Pamela. I'm a California licensed attorney working and living in Hong Kong. And I'm so excited for this topic because it's actually about learning to partner with big corporations. And our expert today is Isabella Carvalho. Isabella Carvalho is a director of strategic ventures at AIA, where she develops partnerships and supports strategic investments in digital ecosystems, technology, and health and wellness companies. I'm gonna let Isabella further introduce herself and give you guys more details about her career journey and big moments in her career.
Hello, everyone. Yes, thank you. My name is Isabella. So I work for AIA, which is one of the largest financial institutions by market cap in the world. So we are present in 18 countries here in Asia Pacific. We've been around for over 100 years. We are very old and sure, but much more than that, to be frank, right? We are a transforming corporation, and to future-proof ourselves, we need to leverage external assets and to really make sure that we leverage those assets in the best possible way. And that's where my work starts. So I work with strategic partnerships and also strategic investments. And we look for companies that help us in different ways. So one way might be, for example, really enhancing our propositions and making sure that everything that we create is super attractive to our consumers, is differentiated, really meets their needs. And the second point is trying to add scale and also in more engaging ways that we would do otherwise. And third, using technology to do things better, more efficiently. And why not, right? Using corporations and partnering with other corporations to venture into very innovative areas to really build the future of insurance. So this is also part of the scope, and this makes my work quite exciting, to be frank. So prior to joining AIA, I used to be a strategy consultant, so for many years, and I was also in a startup. So I was in Lazada in the Philippines and here in Hong Kong. I'm a mechanical engineer, I'm a Brazilian, and I'm someone who's very happy to be here today because I really do believe in the power of community, the power of women coming together so that we can go further, we can go faster, and we can help each other. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I want to let all of our guests know that you can feel free to raise your hand virtually at any point that you want to ask questions, type them into the chat. We want this to be very interactive, and we want to make sure that we're answering the questions that you came here to get answers to, or addressing the topics that you want to learn more about. So if we have no questions right now, I'll just go into the ones that we have prepared. And the first one is, how easy it is for a startup to partner with a larger company, and what are the strategies or challenges that you faced, and how do you recommend people go about it?
Well, so no relationship is easy, right? Might it be person to person, might be corporation to corporation. But obviously, as we all know, it pays off to invest in relationships. So that's why we do it. So I think we always have to have that perspective, right? And why is it difficult? It's because it's an empathy exercise. You have to put yourselves in the shoes of the counterpart. It's okay, what is the other party valuing? What does the other party want? And how can we meet in between, right? In the middle, in a way that adds value to both. It seems very easy, but it's in reality, it is not. So what I would say to people who are in smaller companies and want to partner with us is, first, let's define what a startup is, right? I work with companies that range from small companies that have just proven a product in the market and want to co-develop with us the future of this product or other propositions, right? All the way through billion-dollar companies that says, we are a startup, but are they, right? Not necessarily. And you may imagine that the relationship with smaller companies and big companies is extremely different. So if we focus on the first one, the smaller companies, right? we need to think about two different aspects: when to engage with corporates and how best to engage with corporates. So the when question, what I would say is, you're going to get more attention from us if you have a product that is proven in the market. Now, if you are just in an idea phase, pre-product, it's not necessarily the best moment to start engaging with us, because you're not going to have the same share of mind or attention, because you're not going to be legit enough at that stage. But then you might tell me, hey, some corporates have incubators, which is true. That's true. But if you look at the market, if you think about like 3-4 years ago, there were many more incubators than right now. And why is that? It's because many of those failed in a way, because either there were only marketing exercises where big corporations are saying, hey, I work with innovators, right? I know what's going on in the market. And obviously, you know that once we have to cut costs, the marketing cost goes up, right? Or some of those programs were well thought and had intelligent people running those, but they were disconnected from the business. So you'd have the guys in innovator programs saying, hey, look at all these beautiful ideas that we have, and trying to develop that future. And the guy in the business asking for readily implementable things. What can I do right here, right now? That's my KPI. I don't care about your 10-year thing, right? And when there is disconnect, there is lack of buy-in and things do not work. So again, incubators may be a way if you're still super early stage, but they would not necessarily put you from 0 to 1, right? So I would definitely recommend to look at smaller companies, to do a POC, to co-develop an MVP with, to think about sectors that are less regulated than financial services first. So you can test out some tools, for example, with retail, the consumer goods, and then come to us and say, hey, right? Then you're going to be in a much, much stronger position to come to talk to us. So that's one point. But the second point that is super important is how. The best way of reaching out to us. So it's better to be focused on when and who you want to talk to, right? Try to understand how the corporation works and where the decision making happens. Some big corporates, they are centralized. So all countries or business units will be responding to a headquarters, and this is where I should be looking at. But many of those, especially multinationals, they are federated. So that being said, decision making is spread and decentralized. So once you know that, you can understand where to touch, right? Because if you're in a federated company, for example, you want to sell a regional contract, and you're going to talk to a specific business unit, that's not necessarily the best place. It might happen that they're going to help you to reach out to someone at global or regional level. Then you accomplish your goal. But it's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be like coming back and forth until you can get to the right people. So try to understand how it works, who are decision makers, so that you're going to have a better head start.
And just to feed off of your answer, can you tell us the difference between federated and the other type of corporation you just explained, so people know?
Yeah, when you think about the first type is centralized. Mm-hmm. So decision making will be top down. So generally, if you tap at headquarter level, mm-hmm. you're gonna get the big guys who are gonna decide what's important for you, right? If you think about federated corporations, many banks and insurers are like that. You need to go, like, you're gonna have a framework of decision making and collective objectives that will be set up at headquarter level. However, day-to-day execution decisions will be made locally. So you have to achieve that amount of sales. How you do it, it's up to you, Hong Kong, it's up to you, Singapore, it's up to you, Philippines.
I see.
So I think that's a very important thing to really distinguish. Because depending on what the startup is offering, they're going to be having to tap either regionally or locally, right?
Makes perfect sense. And the next question would be, what do you think one should really consider when entering into a partnership with entities that are much bigger than his or her startup? And what tips would you like to give from your journey at Lazada? And this is a really interesting question, because coming from a legal background myself, like, I would always tell people exit clause, exit clause, exit clause. But I've reading from your background and the mindfulness and the empathy that you put towards these partnerships and these decisions, I really want to expand on this point because I think it requires so much complexity.
That's correct. So I think the first point is, if you partner with big corporations, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So it's the first point, perspective. Don't expect things to happen from day to another. It can be quite frustrating for people who work in startups because they're used to a flat decision making, right? And it's not the case for big corporates. So it's the first point. Partnership and investment processes may take long, so you have to bear with us. You might need to talk to many stakeholders within the organization to get buy-in, many, especially in the federated models, if you want to do a multi-country rollout. So you need to convince all the business units that you want to go through that that's really the best. Obviously, if you convince someone at headquarters, they're going to be helping you, but the final decision making will be local. So you need to be patient and go in the journey with us to be able to accomplish your goals. I think that's very important. So be patient. That's a very important point. But be confident as well. So talking about terms a little bit, right? You have to believe that actually, if we are talking to you, it's because you're important, right? Because in all honesty, I mean, I receive so many startup recommendations every day, like maybe for LinkedIn, through colleagues that work with me, bankers. So if we decided to spend time with you, it's because you're legit. So be confident in what you do. And the days in which we could say we are a big corporation, to buy to more rules are over. So you have more power in the relationship. So it's a good time to engage with us. And it's a good time also to know your terms. So you can push now for fairer terms than you would be able to push, let's say, 2-3 years from now, right? Because we recognize technology is super important. And you need to know it's not all about compensation, right? Or amount of an equity investment or valuation of a company, but it's also about the key terms that make sense for you, for a company to grow and scale, right? It's a bit IP ownership, exit, as I said, right? Exit rights, or you need to push for what you believe in and what is going to be important for you. And you've got the decision, you've got the power to do so. And I think that's the important piece. It's not because you're talking to a super big corporation that everything's going to be one-sided. So provided you have the amount of empathy that is necessary to deal with us in a way that looks partnershipy, not confrontational, you may be able to get very good results.
And is there any past story from your experience at Lazada that you can share with us where a small company had a certain set terms that they weren't willing to negotiate on, or where there could have been more flexible?
Yeah, so in my time in Lazada, we used to do different things, right? So Lazada, again, it's the example of a big company called a startup, right? We used to operate a startup. It was a very informal setup. Everything was very fast. I was doing some partnerships at Lazada, but mostly in the payments area. And it was very interesting because we were dealing with companies that were much more mature than us in the way they operated. And they had a lot of interest in partnering with us because we were growing so fast, right? So the amount of volumes of payments were so fast. But because they understood what was important for us, right, in economic terms and also in terms of terms, we never had a lot of issues in really negotiating. Now, coming to a bigger corporation, an older corporation that has a different structure, so where I am right now, I think I found more examples where there might be misalignment, right? And I'll give you one specific example. So a guy we're dealing with that has a very interesting company, which is quite early stage, right? And they have a product that is proven in the market in another continent that we want to bring to us. And we're trying to negotiate the terms of the contract, right? Obviously, we believe it's a good term. We want to have them just for us in many countries, right? And the guy comes to us and say, but what am I gonna earn giving you exclusivity? You know, if I don't scale, I'm not gonna be $1 billion company. What can I tell my shareholders? And that was very interesting to hear, right? Because we are the largest insurer outside of China, right? Just Ping An is bigger, and Ping An has a bank, has a lot of other businesses, so we're quite big. So it sounds a bit arrogant if you're here that way, right? I say, we give you a scale already. What's the deal, right? So this is one example where, from his point of view, he lacked empathy in dealing with us because he passed the message in a way that can be interpreted as being arrogant. And depending on who was dealing with him, in this case was me, right? So I understand him better because he's a Westerner, I'm a Westerner. I understand where he's coming from, has a lot of ambition. So I can interpret that as ambition instead of arrogance. But if he's dealing with someone of Chinese culture, right? Obviously, people have different perspectives of the world. I'm not saying all Chinese would react like that. But this could come as very, very negative because they prefer people who are more humble, you know, who are going to put themselves more in service instead of in confrontation. So I'm giving this example to say there are different ways of approaching the same topic, which is saying, I do not agree with the term that you're putting forward. You can either be confrontational and having risks of being misinterpreted, and to be frank, risks of us simply dropping the ball, because you say, you don't want to play ball, you're very small, I can replicate what you're doing. It's going to take me a bit longer, but I can replicate. So play ball with me, right? Or you can take a different approach, position yourself differently, and get what you want. So in this case, for example, I had to put him in his place. I was like, haha, I would love to be your shareholder, but I'm your partner. So what are you offering us? Right? And then the conversation starts, and then you can get into where you want. But positioning is very important, and knowing the culture of the people that are in front of you is very important as well, to guarantee that you get what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And next, because of the fast pace of innovation, many of today's large companies form partnerships with startups that have technology or know-how that they need. There are many bright sides, but there are also many dark sides to this. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think the dark sides are the things that we were talking about before, right? Startups want things to be fast. We're going to do as fast as we can, but probably we're going to not match the pace. So you need to manage your expectations. So I think that's a very important point. Not to be frustrated, right? B2B business and B2B cycles are long. It takes time to convert. So it's a very important point. But once you convert, depending on what you have in terms of business and product, what you're offering, you've got almost like a captive market, right? And you have access to a lot of customers, a lot of data. So it's good for you. So be patient. So, but the dark side is really time, I guess, and clash of cultures. So you can end up being amidst a very hierarchical place where you don't fully understand who's calling the shots, and you need to know how to navigate in order not to be burned, right? And that's an art. That's absolutely not science, right? Even as who are internals, we need to know our ways. And I appreciate it might be hard for externals. And as a matter of fact, generally it's easier for me to deal with people in startups or large tech companies that work before in corporations because they get better how it is. So they can navigate also the different stakeholders, timelines, communication style in a much better way. So I think it pays off as well if you have a startup that is doing B2B business, if you want investment, to hire someone who has experience in a corporation to help you.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I read from your bio that you've worked with also a lot of companies in the wellness space. And I feel like in the past year and a half, like wellness has been such a big topic. However, we didn't really see that being practiced a lot in companies before, you know, and especially in my field in the legal, we would have people who would brag about sleeping 2 hours a night, working 10, 12, 13, 14 consecutive hours, not eating, all of these different things. And we found that that fails. And actually, I've met a few people from your company, AIA, who are working to promote that mindfulness and wellness within the company because it does affect the bottom line. And I would like you to speak a little bit more on that and finding that, let's say, balance of what you can be doing to promote your personal and professional development.
So first, I work a lot with lawyers, right? because we negotiate the terms and then we get to you guys to put it to legalese. And one of the lawyers I work with, she's always sending me messages like midnight, 2 a.m., Saturday, I've got a contract. So I really do appreciate that actually in your field of work, there's a lack of balance potentially that is harmful to our health, right? So the point is, for AIA specifically, because we're a life and health insurer, we've got a more incentive, but also a financial incentive for people to be healthier. So there is a program called Vitality that has been launched quite a long time ago by AIA in different countries, which is basically giving you rewards for doing activities that make you healthier. Right? So doing sports, doing health checks, etc. So it's really thinking about preventing things to happen and working on wellness to avoid to have to work on illness, right? So because today,
sorry to interrupt you, these incentives are internally within AIA, or is this something a company is doing to promote wellness across, a whole demographic?
So this program is for all policyholders. So it might be from people who are from AIA or people who are outside of AIA, right? So program really varies because there are different additional things that can be done also on corporates, right? When corporates buy a corporate insurance policy, on top of having the program on your mobile phone and the rewards that you're going to get, like a coffee or a discount in the groceries, et cetera, by doing these wellness activities, we can work with the corporates to do more bespoke programs to them. So programs to help them tackle, for example, lack of sleep. So sleep coaching, some internal communication programs to make people understand how important it is to sleep. A lot of things on mental health we're trying to push right now. So there's an aspect of it which is partnership driven. That's a bit what I do, right? We're going to be trying to source companies that have scalable technologies. They are clinically proven, they have a good customer experience, and they can help people tackle mental health. So a lot of companies right now, they're rolling out programs in cognitive behavior therapy, which is pretty good. And they're quite scalable because many of those have a human coach, but the majority of programs can be done without the human coach. And there's also like intelligent chatbots that be chatting with you and helping you to do the exercises and the routines that get you the right state of mind that it have to be, right? And many of those programs also sitting on your phone, they're going to help you to join all the dots together. So there's this cognitive behavior therapy activities that have to do, but they're going to be also counting your steps, how much you're sleeping. So they can give you, let's say, a wellness score in a more integrative way to help you track how you're feeling. Because what I feel personally, right, having been in situations like yours in which you work so much, right, nonstop, oftentimes you're so excited by work and there's so many hormones making you be awake and going for it. You have to close the deal. You have to do what you have to do. Because you do not even feel rationally that you're going down in terms of health, physical health, and mental health. And once you have those apps nudging you and reminding you that you have to sleep, that you have to eat, that you're not necessarily as strong as you are, you remember that you are a human being. You take time to consider your own needs. And I think it's quite powerful. I've tested many of those. It's also part of the job, right? You start the company, talk to them, but you test the solutions. Okay, as a consumer, would I like it? Right? And there are amazing things being done. And there are also things, this is super close to my core, so that's why I can talk hours about that, right? There are many companies that are now developing things that I think is going to be cutting edge in the future with biomarkers. They can measure all sorts of biomarkers with your phone and really understand not only from an external perspective, but also from an internal perspective, how all the stressors and how your lifestyle affecting your heart, your breathing, predict illness. And this is extremely powerful, right? You take your health in your hands and you also understand not only how you are, but what you can do to change it. And that's very powerful.
And for women that are working in a very high stress, intensive field, and maybe we have more old school bosses that kind of don't understand how this mindfulness and wellness affects their bottom line, what would you recommend, or like a tip you could give us to help us communicate this so that we can find that balance, and that our bosses, our superiors do understand that, you know, those 2-3 hours of extra sleep are going to actually impact positively the outcome of your work, versus being sleep deprived, food deprived, all these different things, you can't actually produce good work.
So I think this comes back to the empathy thing that I was talking about right before, because it really depends. So if you have a Western boss, I think the way you're going to be saying that is very different. And if he's younger, he might have a closer understanding of why this is important. Whereas if you're talking to someone who is very hierarchical, that does not want to have any interruption to the status quo, it's going to be more difficult, right? So I think it really depends on the style of the person, and you have to try to tackle into what is core to that person as well. So what I noticed is that in my personal experience with a boss, let's call him B, right? That he was having issues himself with not sleeping, with being awake all the time. We could see that he was super stressed out. That on top of his table, there were many medicines, you know, and many like supplements and stuff. So I could understand by the way he was behaving and by what I could see that he was living the same situation. So when I got into that, I started asking, well, what supplements are you taking? What are those for? Oh, this is for sleep. I understand. So you're stressed out. Yeah, so I am too. So then you try to get him to get the answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You connect it to his car and say, you're feeling that, so I'm feeling that. We're both. How can we solve? Then it's more difficult for him to say no to you, because I started with him, not with you. You're not showing weakness, right?
And connect with him on a personal level. You found that common ground.
Yeah, but you need to observe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very important thing. It's not about like spying on people, right? Nothing negative. But you need to observe and say, okay, how can I connect to that point where he's not going to feel that I'm trying to avoid working, or, you know, and I think that's the point that you have to figure out. And it depends on the person, right? Mm-hmm. I've seen in another job that I had as well, someone who had kids, and I discovered that he was also a he. I had 2 daughters that he was raising alone. When you have men, I guess they're very implicated in their family and children, then it's much easier to connect as well on that topic, because they kind of have more empathy toward you. They see you as the daughter grown up, right? So having this kind of conversation on a personal level is also easier. So you just need to know what is the hook. Mm-hmm. And then you put the hook for the fish to get it. So I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, totally. And just to remind everyone, I just saw there was a message to feel free to ask questions and raise your hand. Please do. We want to know what you're interested in, what you want to talk about. But until then, we'll continue on with the conversation. And Isabella, before we officially launched on to this event, we briefly spoke about how women sometimes aren't as comfortable contributing and being more proactive when it comes to certain topics, being in board meetings, when the topic of finances and economics and strategies come up. And my question to you is, what is 1 or 2 subjects in your field that you feel like some women lack information in? And what resources can they use to educate themselves, no matter how big or small the resource is? What can they be doing on a daily basis to help educate themselves?
Yeah, so I think there are different things that you can think about. So unfortunately, in my experience, I just had, I guess, one company that we really had a partnership and a big partnership with, that had a female CEO. And she's a very strong woman. It's impressive, right? She gets into space, she owns that space completely. And I think this is how she managed to get this partnership done, to be frank. It's really having a very strong position, really being extremely confident in that she can deliver and being very intelligent about navigating the relationships within the company. So you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, we're not where we should be, I guess. Not as CEOs of companies to get partnerships with these big corporates, nor as women in the table negotiating, also from the side of the corporates. I think in terms of getting experience, I think the best source of experience, the best source of knowledge is experience, right? So if you want to understand how big corporates work and how best to partner, reach out to people and talk to as many people as you can, so that you're going to be, again, understanding what is important for them, so that you can start a conversation and position yourself in the best possible way to get your outcomes. But another point I think is important, and it helped me a lot, to be frank, is looking at a psychology books and podcasts, because again, it's all about the human being and how you can be perceived as someone who's adding value, who they have to hear, not because you're a woman, right? Or anything else. It's simply because you're going to add value, right? So the way you position yourself, the way you position the message is as important as the content of the message itself. And those books help you. One book that helped me that I think was quite interesting is called Conscious Business. The guy who wrote it is Fred Kaufman. And this book basically, it's funny because he gives a lot of case studies and give different archetypes of people and how we can deal with different archetypes to get the best outcome. And also to make sure that you don't burn out in the process. Because sometimes things get so difficult, right? That you get emotionally affected by what is happening, right? At work, etc. And then everything derails. So when you have those archetypes that you can come back to mentally, once you are dealing with those situations, it helps you to navigate things in a more intelligent way and spending less mental energy in each of those. So this book was pretty good. So I think it's a good call for people who want to learn more.
And is there any one particular podcast that you listen to or something that you reference on a day-to-day basis just to kind of like keep up to date with what's happening in the industry?
So that's funny, right? Because generally, when it's about keeping up with what is happening in the industry, I read much more than I listen. And in terms of podcasts, generally I listen to things that have nothing to do with my industry for two reasons. One, because a lot of my work is to find strategic pillars for a partnership or to justify an investment. And you need to be creative. It cannot be cookie cutter, right? And you develop creativity, and this is scientifically proven, right? By touching different aspects and different subjects so that you learn how to make connections in between the different aspects, subjects, people. And that's how creativity is built. So because of that, I listen to things that are absolutely nothing to do with what I do. So things about like science, I love nutrition and functional medicine. So I listen a lot about how the human body works. And the knowledge does not seem to be translatable, but it is in a way, because it's everything about systems. And again, stimulate your brain to think differently. But one thing that I believe is very practical, even though people will think I'm crazy, right? Because from the outset, it doesn't seem to be practical at all, is philosophy. I can tell it, philosophy is very practical when you are older. Because when I was younger, I was like, this crazy people thinking about the meaning of life. But then as time passes by, you see that that's a very important question. The question of values, the question of how to deal with situations is very important. So I listen a lot to some podcasts that talk about applied philosophy. So how to think about those concepts that are 2,000 years old, but couldn't be more new, right? Because we're not applying them. But it really helps. So it's not about the industry, but it helps you to build the foundations that are necessary to grasp through a career into that industry as well.
Perfect. And before I hand this over to questions from our guests, I want to ask you, what are a couple of things that you do in your everyday life that these are just like your religious rituals that contribute to your professional development, your personal development, your overall development and wellness that you can share with us?
So there is my friend of almost 17 years, the gym.
Oh, the gym.
So I go to the gym in the morning. Yes, my best friend. I can tell you.
Yeah.
Helps with stress, helps with feeling accomplished. And I love to go in the morning because I feel that I did something for me, for my health in the morning. So whatever happens at work, even if I leave at 10 p.m., I did something and I feel accomplished. So I think that's the most important thing. And finally, it's about curiosity. So as I mentioned, I really love to learn. And everything that can help me learn might be things that are directly related to work, but things that are completely unrelated, they really help me because that's about mental wellness, right? It's also proven in that the more you learn, the more you keep your brain healthy, right, for longer. So I think that's a very important point as well.
Those are two great points. And I'm definitely going to try to think about those as I go about my days, keep exercising more and learning more. I definitely know that sparking the curiosity and just being able to have as much information, access to information that we do now, it's so important that when we have questions, we do our own research and we just fill our minds with everything that we want to know. So it's great that you're able to spend time in your everyday life doing things that are completely unrelated to your work. And in essence, I feel like it circles back and it does benefit your performance at work to spend that time on yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, we're human beings, we're not machines.
Mm-hmm.
I've already burned out once. I don't want that to happen again. And I can tell it really does influence your performance. And when you burn out, I mean, there's no empathy at work. People think that you're really, what happened? You're a stellar performer. And this happens, right? So if you don't cultivate your wellness every day, you're going to fall into trouble. I can tell you by experience.
And can you tell us to that point of burning out? Because I feel like we see it more and more often with people younger and younger, wanting to accomplish more, do it faster, do it better. Can you tell us maybe a couple signs, symptoms that you had before you realized you were burning out, and maybe a couple things you did to kind of get a handle on the situation, nurture yourself, and get back into the field?
So it was funny because work was a bit like an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to get into what I was doing, to finalize the projects, to get things done. You know, I think, to be frank, to do the type of work that I do, you have to be a little bit like that, because sometimes you have deal timelines can be quite challenging, and you have to believe what you're doing, and you have to be aggressive in a way. So when I was younger, it was even worse from that perspective, right? That's not. Now I'm trying to get more balance. So that was one. So I was blind to my personal life. So my friends were at work. I used to live very close to my office. Everything was work. So when you start being mono subject, if everything is focused, all your attention and energy is focused on just one thing, that's certainly a red light. Something will happen down the line, right? I started going less often to the gym, and I go basically every day. So that was certainly a red light, but it seemed natural because I had to go to accomplish, right? And then I started not to sleep. I would be dreaming about work all the time. So there was a moment I arrived at home at 2 a.m. from work. I couldn't sleep. At like 3 or 4 a.m., I slept a little bit. And then I dreamed that my boss was sleeping in my couch and one of my colleagues was sleeping in my bed. So my subconscious was telling me, stop, they're here, right? And then I couldn't sleep anymore. So I ended up in the emergency room at like 6 a.m. crying, I cannot sleep. Imagine that you've been working like crazy for months, you're sleeping 5 hours a night, and then you cannot sleep. And they put me into like a IV and some like, calm down. And then a doctor came to me and said, hey, do you want to die? You're too young for that. And this really opened my eyes because it was like, wow, without noticing, I'm letting myself being killed. So after this happened, I really started paying more attention. So for me, I said, okay, my exercise is key and I'm not gonna give it up. So it's the first point. So generally I block my calendar in the morning. I talk also to my PA. I say, please do not put meetings as much as possible, right? in that time because I'll be at the gym. So I try to carve out space for myself since that happened. But you also have to talk to your boss. And again, these are not easy conversations to have, right? It's really to balance the aspect of people thinking that you're weak. Like, I'm not weak. I'm just a human being. And if you let me live as a human being, I'm going to be much more productive for you. It's going to be good for you. So I think that's the argument. It's good for you that I'm okay.
Yeah. Right. And one way to approach those conversations with a boss that I've found that is very effective, which has nothing to do with the conversation itself, is just being very productive at work when you're there, when you're online. It makes it much easier to go to your boss and say, I need time for me. When you're performing, when you're actually respecting the work hours, when they're not catching you, you know, on social media or doing something that's not work related. So I found that it was always, I had a more valid point to ask for time off or ask for time for myself when I was hands-on at work, super committed, and they had nothing to complain about.
It's about trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the point. Once you build trust,
yeah,
then those conversations are easier. If they don't trust you, then it's it's a more fundamental issue.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you so much, Isabella, and I've had such a lovely conversation with you.